David Friedman was the United States ambassador to Israel during Trump's first administration. He's a longtime friend of President Trump. He served as his lawyer. He is a strong, proud, religious Jew. And he's being interviewed here. There's discussion about him being the United States ambassador to the UN. He would be fantastic. And here he discusses that and many other issues going on with Israel right now. Here's this interview.
Ambassador David Friedman, such an honor having you with us.
Thank you, Lita. Great to be with you again.
Let's start with talking about the recent news. Are you going to be Trump's new ambassador to the UN?
You're asking the wrong guy. It's really the president's decision. He'll make it, and I'm sure when he does, everyone will know. But at this point, it's really up to him.
Are you willing to jump on board and to going back to working with the president?
Well, I love the president. We're good friends. Anything I can do to help our country, whatever it is, in the government, outside, whatever it is, I'm, of course, going to try to help.
Yeah, well, it will be a great honor for us and for the state of Israel, obviously. Let's talk about the recent developments in the Middle East. It seems as if President Trump and his close team are willing to go and strike Iran if needed. What will you think will be the outcome on the nuclear deal with Iran? Is there going to be a strike? How do you see things?
Well, look, I think we start with the finish, which is that there's no tolerance, zero, for President Trump for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So now the question is, how do we make sure that that goal is achieved? No question, he'd prefer to achieve that without a strike, if possible. And I believe he will, reinstate the maximum level of sanctions and go through as much as he can diplomatically to avoid a strike. But we're talking about a relatively short window of time. And I think that once he becomes convinced that there is no other alternative, I think a strike will be inevitable. So I don't know when, but I think that unlike the prior administration, there is a real credible option here for military action.
Mm-hmm. We've seen the enormous changes in pressuring Hamas to release the hostages. We've seen Trump threatening Hamas, if you won't release the hostages, we will act, and we will act firmly and with full strike,
right,
full force. How do you see Israel and the U.S. shift in changing the approach towards Hamas in releasing more hostages?
Well, look, I think the short-term goal is to release as many hostages as possible, with the only caveat that Israel can't lose the war or jeopardize its existing security position. We see Israel's going back in, right? They're beginning to retake Gaza. I think that's going to continue. I think there'll be two parallel tracks. There'll be Israel moving forward with its military operations to the point, I believe, of really occupying all of Gaza, and at the same time, seeking a diplomatic opportunity to free the hostages. So I think, unlike what we saw in the past, where there was a ceasefire and a negotiation, I think now we're going to see both of those processes, the military and the negotiation, going forth at the same time. As far as the end, look, I believe what President Trump said a couple weeks ago is the right idea. I think that
evacuating the Gaza Strip?
I think the Gaza Strip needs to be evacuated. Now, you can look at it from two perspectives. One, it's the right thing to do from a humanitarian perspective, because there's unexploded ordnance, bombs, landmines, as well as buildings that are on the verge of the collapse. It is, as Steve Witkoff said, unlivable. So that's one point. The second point, which I think is even more important, is the way that I think Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, all the radical Islamist groups, the way they calibrate victory and defeat is on the basis of land. So I think if the land is gone, there will be no debate that Hamas started a war, that it couldn't finish, that it lost the war, that starting wars against Israel doesn't pay, and that the consequences are dire. And I think that that's enormously important to the future of Israel's security, the world's security, that they know that they've lost, and they won't do it again.
And Trump has the solutions to make, Egypt, Jordan, maybe Turkey, get the refugees from Gaza?
I think so. Look, there's a lot of countries in the Middle East. There's a lot of countries in North Africa along the Mediterranean. Do these countries want to absorb them? Probably in most cases, no. Will they under the right circumstances? Does the United States have leverage? Is Trump in a position to project American strength to achieve that result? I think so.
Do you think President Trump was serious when he said the U.S. should take over the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, I think when he's taken over, what does that mean? He sees along the Gaza coast 25 miles, right, of pristine beachfront. Same as in Tel Aviv, right, where they're getting, I don't know, $50,000 a meter or something, for the high-end beachfront property. He understands the value. And from his perspective, America's now beginning a sovereign wealth fund, right? There's money to invest in ways that help American security. I think he sees it long-term as a place that can, deliver a good investment return. And I think that, obviously somebody needs to, provide municipal services, police, has to have sovereignty. I think that would be Israel, I would assume. But I think that whether it's the U.S., whether it's the Emirates or Saudi, whoever who has money to invest, you can't there's not a lot of ocean-facing, sunset-facing, beachfront property left in the world that's undeveloped. And here's a whole 25-mile front. So I think he sees the value there.
Incredible. I have to ask you, I don't know if you're going to be the next UN ambassador, but how do you see the hypocrisy of the world and the UN after everything that happened in Israel on October 7th? People still blaming us for this war, for what is happening, yet Hamas is still holding Israeli hostages, innocent civilians.
Oh, it's horrifying. Like, I think we just found out yesterday that the Gaza Health Ministry, right, that's been the source for all the casualties for the last 16 months, now admits that, like, the vast majority of casualties were male soldiers, right? Until a couple of days ago, it was women and children. It flipped literally overnight to men, male soldiers. And the entire world was condemning Israel for something Israel didn't do. Even though Israel could have done it in the context of a defensive war, they would have had the right to do it, but they didn't even do it. And now the world is, so have you seen, I looked at the New York Times this morning, I didn't see any apologies. I didn't see apologies from Le Monde or the BBC or anywhere else in the world. It's a very tough world out there right now if you're Jewish, very tough. I mean, remember, all those protests that began against Israel, they began on October 8th, right? That was a couple of weeks before Israel even responded to what happened on October 7th, right? So, the glorifying of Hamas occurred before a single Gazan was attacked. So, unfortunately, we have a lot of anti-Semitism in the world, but it's not new. I mean, it's a 3,000-year-old disease, and it will continue, and we'll do the best we can to fight it. But at the end of the day, Israel's always going to be strong, and America's always going to be strong, and the relationship's always going to be close. And I think more countries will join that alliance, as we see today in Hungary as an example.
To finish, maybe on a more optimistic note, Saudi Arabia, do you see a peace agreement happening in this Trump administration, getting the Saudis to sign a peace agreement? Yeah,
I do. I mean, he's heading over there, I think, next month. He'll go to UAE. I think he's going to Qatar. I don't know the full details of his trip, but I think it's a priority to get the Saudis on board. I think it'll be great for Israel, for America, for Saudi Arabia. Now the question is, what are the terms? Right? I don't know what the terms are.
They'll be willing to push aside their ambitions for a Palestinian state?
Well, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not in the room. I think that anyone looking at the situation fairly right now has to conclude that there can never be a Palestinian state. Israel cannot subject itself to that risk. I think the Saudis are rational people. I think they watch the same news that we all watch. They can make the same calculations we can all make. They understand the risks that we all understand. So, I'm optimistic, but again, I don't know the details, or even if those issues have been discussed in detail.
Yeah, not just that. Trump starting to understand where the money was going all these years through U.S. aid to the Palestinians who were actually paying terrorists, who are actually giving salaries to terrorists. I mean,
it's horrible to say it, but for the last 4 years, America was funding terrorism, and in particular, the last 60 months, we were funding the wrong side of the war.
Yeah. Ambassador David Friedman, thank you so much for coming to this conference. It was such a pleasure, as always, having you. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you. And good luck with the conference.
And he definitely has a deeper perspective as having been ambassador, and definitely having been exposed to information that the average person is not exposed to. But everything on Gaza and the UN, all of these things are quite simple. They've been so overly exposed that if someone just has some common sense, then you see the forecast very simply. There cannot be a Palestinian state next to Israel. They want the annihilation of Israel. It just can't happen. And the Saudis would align with Israel once the political climate makes it easier for them to do so.